Hello, and welcome to the Brutal Iron Gym podcast, where our goal is to cut through the BS and deliver the brutal truth about topics related to health and happiness. So, today's topic is training, and we're going to discuss the need for personalization. So, I've been having conversations with various clients and various people interested in programming, and we've talked about the ways in which programming for aesthetics like strength sports, how they're offered in today's kind of social media. A lot of times you can get what would be considered like bulk programming. So for like $10 a month, you can pick from like 16 different programs. Some are like strength, some are aesthetics, some are a mixture, some are doing this, some are doing that. And the programs are not personalized. And often some of them will say, like there's one kind of person who offers programming, and they'll say it's personalized because in the section where they say quadricep accessory in powerlifting, for example, they would say pick from the following, and it would be like hack squat, narrow stance, leg press, and maybe like step ups. And you're supposed to pick that thinking that it's personalized, but the person who's buying the program doesn't have a freaking clue which one of those three would be best for them and what are the pros and cons, like what are the trade-offs between those three. So, for example, if you want to grow bigger quads so they can eventually be stronger, a heavier weight load on a movement is most typically going to work better. So, for example, leg press is going to typically work better than step ups. Now, are there exceptions to that? You freaking bet there are, and that's why people would pay a trainer to tell you what those exceptions are and tell you which one is best for you. So a program like that will say it's personalized. But just because you get to personally pick the option doesn't mean it's the right type of personalization. So personalization should be with the connotation that what's being done for you or written for you is best for you. Not that you just get to pick randomly amongst three things that are not equivalent, by the way, even though they all work your quads. Like I said, there's an enormous amount of differences in terms of weight load, stability, and a whole bunch of other factors like joint health and recovery rate differences. So, for example, you recover faster from step ups than you do from heavy leg press. So, there's a whole bunch of stuff that will be layered in. So, if somebody's doing 2 leg workouts a week, 1 squat, 1 deadlift, and maybe they're both heavy based variations for that cycle, they might want to do step ups because it helps them recover better. Whereas if somebody's doing a heavy squat, but they're doing kind of an odd variation of deadlifts to target a specific weakness in a program, then that deadlift isn't going to require as much recovery. So therefore, they might want to have a heavier, more aggressive accessory, such as leg press compared to the step ups, because there would be that room for greater muscular demand, and there would be that room for recovery ability to allow the more aggressive exercise to be beneficial. So you can see, even in just the example of that, why there are benefits to understanding personalization differences. So I wanted to go through some examples, both kind of strength-based and aesthetic-based, and show why personalization is important. And then I wanted to make an offer for you guys at the end. So you'll have to listen to the end and see what the offer is. But just this morning, I was taking an athlete who competes in aesthetic sports. So they've competed in women's physique. They crushed their shows. So they won first overall, and then like top 5 in the second show, which is a big national level show. So a huge show. And they did extremely well. And they were told that their body type was led towards women's physique, even though they preferred to do figure. So the person they had worked with before told them that they were best built for physique. So they built them for physique. They competed in physique, and they won overall, and they won top 5 in the show. So that trainer was dead on right. The person had a great physique for women's physique, which is a specific category of aesthetics. But this athlete likes the figure look. So can you take someone's body type, even if they're best kind of balanced for a specific category? So like in aesthetic sports, there's wellness, there's bikini, there's figure, there's women's physique, there's men's physique, there's men's classic physique, there's men's bodybuilding. There's a lot of categories, and each of those categories, they emphasize different aspects. So in one category, it might be better to have wider shoulders than hips. In another category, you want to have more like bottom heavy type physique. In a different category, you want more of a top heavy kind of physique. So there are differences in body types and to what category the person would fit best. However, that person may compete, let's say 4 times a year. That would be kind of a really high frequency. So on 4 days of the year, out of 365 days, they will look the way that they should look on stage. But for the other 361 days of the year, they don't have the body they really wanted. So if that person likes a figure aesthetic more than a women's physique, even if they win their physique shows, they still don't have the body they want. They can get a lot of trophies, and that feels good, get accolades, get photos, get people telling you how awesome you look. But if you don't look the way that you want to look, it won't make you happy. So one of the things we've done is we've kind of changed around their training to see if we can change the detail and shape of the muscle they have and push their physique more towards the look that they want. So, for example, we did a back circuit in which we had a banded rear delt kind of fly, so to work the back side of the shoulder. They then went into a cable standing row with elbows flared up, and that worked the back of the shoulder, but it also worked on the inside muscles of the back. So, for example, the muscles between the shoulder blade and backbone, which would be our lower traps and our rhomboids. So that exercise, by doing the rear delts first, it pumped up the rear delts to make sure that the rear delts still felt maximal challenge during that row. But we then put the emphasis of the drive of the row, the main lifter, the main mover of the row, to be the lower traps and rhomboids, not the lats. What this helped do was create depth to their back muscles, but not create width. We then went from the bands into that cable row into a seated cable row with a narrow overhand grip, and it was kind of a slanted 45 grip and 45 degree angle, And what that did was it targeted the exact same middle musculature of the back, but in a heavier weight load, this time reducing the rear delt involvement and maybe kind of rear delt kind of fatigue impairment. So if we would try to do 3 movements in a row that all were rear delt dependent, of course the third one's going to be crap because the rear delts are dead by then. So we had rear delts involved in the first 2, and then in the second 2, there was an overlapping from going from rear delt involvement to mid-back involvement. So we kept the lats out of it for the most part. So what you see as the main focus of that circuit is rear delt and mid-back. What this does is this creates depth to their back aesthetics. The rear delt makes sure that they still look like they have wide shoulders. But by dropping out the lats, it makes sure that we don't get wide lats, which makes for more of a women's physique or kind of a female bodybuilder type look as compared to figure. But we still want back development. We still want a good back. So we focus on back detail, back depth, which is the lower traps and rhomboids. So by doing that circuit, we took that person's physique, somebody who already had wide shoulders, they already have wide lats, but they don't want a physique that promotes wide lats. They want a physique that promotes a more V taper based on back depth and shoulder width. So therefore, we had to create a circuit of exercises that were specific to that type of development. So if they had been following just some generic program that said, lat pull downs for 3 sets of 10, cable seated rows for 3 sets of 10, maybe then they do, dumbbell pullovers or straight arm pull downs, 3 sets of 10, maybe seal rows, 3 sets of 10, where it's just these basic kind of movements that nothing is wrong with those basics. They are the basics because they're the best. But they don't have the aesthetic shape change and the aesthetic detail change to what we would want for that person's individual specific needs. So, this person had followed programs before that were quote unquote personalized. Oh, okay, well, you're doing, women's physique. Well, here's a women's physique program. We'll build your body into women's physique. Well, how do you know what you're starting with? Everyone starts differently. So, for example, in contrast to that female, I have another female who wants to go to a wellness look, which is thick thighs, kind of a good muscle in the upper body, but you're definitely more lower body dominant. This female has absolutely no shoulder width. So the first female had wide bone structures. So it helped to work around her lats so the lats didn't grow too large and take away from the figure look. that she wanted. Well, the other female who wants the wellness look, even though the wellness category doesn't emphasize upper body, she has no upper body. No shoulders, no width, no nothing. So we're doing really big, heavy, basic movements just trying to slap on muscle. Now, most wellness programs that are pre-programmed and generic, they de-emphasize the upper body because the upper body is supposed to be lower, like in muscularity, than the lower body. So the upper body is supposed to be less muscularity than the lower body. So their programs will emphasize that. Well, this female isn't starting at a basic kind of like white template, so where everything's equally balanced. So as long as she emphasizes her lower body more, it'll eventually be big and her upper body will be enough. If this female followed a generic wellness program, their upper body would never be big enough. They would grow bigger legs, but there wasn't enough stress load on the upper body to get it up to at least the minimum of what was needed for women's wellness. So it's extremely important to recognize that pre-programmed kind of generic programs, even by category, which people will promote as being personalized, which is absolute bullshit. So the trainers that do that are either assholes or they don't know any better. But just because it's by category does not mean it's personalized. What is the body you're starting with? That's what you have to write the program for. Now, we have a men's example. So in men's physique, worked with someone in the past who had low set shoulders. So their genetic placement of their shoulders was low. Now, this is an odd way of saying it, but what it meant is they don't have a lot of width to their shoulder, and they have very long traps, very tall, long traps. So their traps look big. However, by the traps looking big, it actually makes them look narrow in their shoulder width. So the other issue that we ran into was since their shoulders are lower set, they don't have as large of a growth potential for their shoulder cap. Meaning that if their bicep and their tricep get too large, their upper arm gets too large, it'll actually make their shoulder cap look smaller and therefore give them aesthetics of a narrower look. So if they were to grow their traps too large, if they were to grow their upper arms too large, their shoulders would look narrower and narrower. And in men's physique, that's not a good thing. You need to have width to the shoulders. So this person actually did no direct arm training and no direct trap work. They used that to eventually get themselves a pro card. So they didn't train their arms, they didn't train their traps, and they actually needed to avoid training those so they could have the best aesthetics and actually have a great enough aesthetics that they could get a pro card. Now, if you look at pretty much anybody's training programs, anybody that gets any templated program, it's going to have arm training. It's going to have trap training. That would have made this person look worse, and they would not have been able to achieve the pro card. They would never have had their best aesthetics because the program wasn't written for them. It wasn't really written for their body type. So there are absolutely needs for personalization in programming. Let's go through a couple strength examples. So if we look at like powerlifting, for example, or strongman, if somebody does low bar squats versus high bar squats, that changes the type of accessory work you should do to improve your squat. So for example, a low bar squat, you would need to emphasize more posterior chain accessories rather than front side of the body, such as the quads. So you would need to make sure you have low back bracing support exercises. You'd need a lot of glutes and a lot of hamstrings, and maybe one or two quads just to make sure that they're still there. Whereas a high bar squatter, they don't need as much postural benefit, so they don't need as much lower back development because they're not as bent over as a low bar squatter. They still need some. I'm not saying they don't need any, but they need less. Then they still need glutes, they still need hamstrings, but they need more quads. So the accessory lifts for somebody who does high bar have a different percentage focus amongst the involved muscles compared to somebody who does low bar. So where you place your bar placement changes in your entire program as to what accessories you should focus on. Another example we have in powerlifting is wide stance squats versus shoulder width squats. So too often, way too often, in powerlifting program, you see people just being told to do wide stance squats. And look, this is the best way to do it. This is how you get the most power in your hips and blah, 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 bullshit, bullshit, bullshit. So you'll have a coach who makes everybody they work with squat the exact same position. Absolutely stupid. That coach should not be accepting any money from anyone and no one should be paying them. Everyone is built differently. Therefore, everyone has to squat differently. Not everyone is the same. Therefore, not everyone's squat stance should be the same. So I've watched people try to squat with a really wide stance. They'll lower down through the eccentric okay because they're bottoming out their hamstrings. Then the second they go to try to drive any force on the way up, their knees cave in, they drive through their inner quads, they have no glute involvement, it's all low back and inner knee, and then they wonder why their back feels like shit, why their knee feels like shit, and why they have absolutely no power coming out of the hole of a squat. Because it wasn't the right position for them. And oh my gosh, you can see this happening when the person's moving. It looks like absolute shit. But the coach doesn't know any better, the lifter doesn't know any better, and the people just kind of run through the program. And out of the next, 20 people that do that kind of program, 18 of the 20 won't even be lifting in 2 years because their back hurts, their hip hurts, or they'll say powerlifting was too aggressive, or you can't strength train forever, it kind of beats you up and you get old, and they're only in the 30s. Absolutely freaking stupid, asinine, dumb, 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 dumb. But unfortunately, the trainer doesn't know any better. They're just taking money. They're believing whatever bullshit advice they get from people who have the same opinions that they do. So unfortunately, that's what you see. Is you'll see squat widths not being accurate to the body type of the lifter. And that equates to lower back stress, hip stress, knee stress. It equates to joint stress. So what really needs done is their positioning needs to match their bone structure. So that way none of their joints have to be torqued into position and the stress remains in the muscles, not in the connective tissues. And then they can continue to develop strength well into the future because muscles will continue to grow over time and they're avoiding that joint stress and tear. So that is what you see. When you look at people who do templated programming, so $10 a month for XXX programs, or you're trying to do a program, and for example, if you pay a coach a program and you can see people in your gym doing the exact same program, but they're just on a week behind you or a week ahead of you, but you're all doing the same exercises, same rep ranges, same sets, like, holy shit, wake up. That's awful. That's an awful program. Don't pay that person. Okay? So everyone, even beginners, can benefit from personalization in their programming. And why is because everyone's slightly different. We have different body types, we have different recovery rates, we have different abilities, we have different schedules, we have different nutrition, there's different sleep patterns, there's different stress patterns, there's different everything when it comes to individuals. So yes, the basics are the best. If you want to be a good powerlifter, you do have to squat, bench, and deadlift. No shit. Okay? If you want to be good at aesthetics, you do have to have a balanced physique. But what physique you start with determines how you'll balance it. Like we said for the person with the low set shoulders, they already had enough upper arm development that more and more upper arm development wasn't going to help. So if they were following a program that was balanced in its workload for all muscles, it would have made that person look worse and they would not have earned their pro card. So the basics are the best, but how you perform the basics, how much and when and why and what, all of that is different. Now, how can you use this information? First of all, recognize that if you're following a templated program, that's the same as everyone else who paid the $10.99 or, same as everybody else who follows that coach. That is not a good coach. It's not a good program. You should go get ones that are for free. There are free programs, okay, that are online that are kind of like generic template ones. Don't pay someone for a generic template one. Go get a free one. Then if you're going to spend some money, spend all the money and get a personalized one. It's going to help the most, so that way you spend the next months and years of your life getting the most out of it, not getting less health, more beat up, all this stuff, all the negative stuff. Okay? So analyze your training. Ask yourself, why am I doing these exercises? In what way is this best for me? Or is this just something general that everybody else does? So is this what everyone does, or is this what I need? Ask yourself that. Now, here's the offer. I have helped people earn pro cards in aesthetics. I have helped people earn elite totals, national records, state records, all that stuff in powerlifting. I've actually helped strong men and women win competitions as well. So I've helped athletes. I've helped Olympic athletes, by the way. I have helped people at very high-end levels. Now, if you've listened to this for the last 20 minutes and 24 seconds, I appreciate you listening to the podcast. And I want to support you for supporting us and offer help. If you would like to send a video of any lift that you're struggling with, whether it's squat, bench, deadlift, or otherwise, if you're an aesthetic athlete and you want to send pictures, send them to our Instagram. Our Instagram is brutaliron@gmail.com, and I will give you back suggestions. If it's aesthetics, I'll give you back suggestions of what you should emphasize more or less of. If it's strength movements, I'll emphasize what type of accessories you should have for the position you're in the lifts that you send. So, this is not free help from somebody who needs a shitload of work to do. I already have a shitload of work to do. But I'm offering it for free because I can't think of a way to have you take the information from today's podcast and implement it on your own. That's why people pay for coaches, because I've watched people move. I'm a personal trainer for 18 years. I've had over 2,000 clients. I've taught exercise physiology classes at the university level. I have watched people move all my life. So I can watch you squat, and in 3 minutes I'll tell you everything that's wrong with it. Okay? So I can help. If you're willing to reach out, and it's here. Here's the help. So go to our Instagram channel, brutaliron@gmail.com. If you don't subscribe, please do. Okay, please follow us. But send us a video. If you're a strength athlete, send us photos if you're an aesthetic athlete. We'll give you back some information, and we'll help you start to personalize your programming to make sure you're getting the most for your efforts. So I appreciate you listening to the podcast. Thank you very much for the people who support the podcast by being patrons and donating to the podcast every month. That's insanely helpful. I'm so grateful for the help and your your gift of the gesture of the money. So thank you for those who support the podcast. Thank you for those who share the podcast. Thank you for those who like and follow the podcast. The more you interact with the podcast, the more you help promote the podcast, the more we can kind of give you great information and stay around even longer. So thank you to those who support us, and we want to make sure we support you. So reach out if there's anything you need. If you're not sure about your programming, send us videos, send us pictures, whatever you need, and we'll help you out. So thank you very, very, very much for listening, and I truly hope these podcasts are helpful and they help you live a healthier and happier life. Okay? So if you do like the podcast, please share it with family and friends. So when you find an episode you really like, send it to someone. Just shoot it in a text, shoot it in an email, whatever you got to do. But the more we share it, the happier and healthier the world will be around us. Also, if you like this information, you can always find more from us on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter, Brutal Iron Gym. And if you have any questions, feedback, or suggestions, we'd love to hear from you. The podcast is for you, so we want to know what you want to learn about. You can tell us at our email, brutalirongym@gmail.com. As always, I hope this was helpful, and thank you for listening. And thank you for watching.